恭敬大德三体，为是法会，其一切众生，尽转妙法论，教导我们如何了生脱此离苦得乐，速证无上。Will the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to how to leave suffering and attain bliss, and end birth and death, and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo sadanto sujedo ye ola adi samyao sambuto je.
Namo saranto sujedo ye alahadi samyao sambuddhosye.
Together. 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。The unsurpassed, deep, profound, subtle, wonderful Dharma in 100,000 million eons is difficult to encounter. Now that I have come to receive and hold it within my sight and hearing, I vow to fathom the thus come one's true and actual meaning. Okay. All Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, fellow Dharma Master, and all good and wise friends, good evening. Today is December 31st, 2016. We're here in Berkeley Buddhist Monastery, the last day of the year. So we have a lot of very sincere people coming to spend their last day this year at the monastery to listen to the Dharma. And so tonight, you can tell that Dharma Master sure is away. He just flew off to Australia, and he asked Jin-He and myself to just to stand, you could say stand in for the evening to keep the Dharma wheel turning, keep the light of the Buddha Dharma shining. And so we thought what we could do, which would be a much, you could say, continual, it could be more consistent, is to actually lecture on the Limitless Life Sutra. If people have been paying attention, Jing-He has been lecturing on the Wuliang Jing, the Limitless Life Sutra here. You don't need the text because we're only going to be lecturing a little passage, not even a passage, just a name. And so, so we thought, let's just continue with that, so then people can, hear a continual sutra. So when Reverend Sher is away, we can continue with the Limitless Life Sutra, and when he comes back, he'll continue on the seventh ground. Next week, yeah, next week he'll be back on the screen. Seventh ground Bodhisattva in the Avatamsaka Sutra. So today, just to start, we were thinking if we'd be willing to recite Amitabha Buddha's name, maybe 21 times, just to get the sound of Amitabha in our hearts, because the Limitless Life Sutra is actually the sutra that describes Amitabha Buddha's past vows. So we read the Amitabha Sutra every day, just like tonight. We recited the shorter Amitabha Sutra about how Amitabha Buddha made this Pure Land. But in fact, there's another sutra that describes how he made the Pure Land, and this is the sutra we're studying. We won't get to that part tonight, but in order just to invoke the spirit of Amitabha, we were thinking to start with a little recitation. Okay, so everyone please put your palms together, and we can invite Amitabha Buddha to join us. Namo Amitofo. Ai 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 Namo Amidobo. 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 Okay, so tonight, as I just said, we are going to investigate the Sutra of the Buddha's teaching on limitless life, the 无量寿经. And Jing Fosher has been steadily going through the sutra, getting to the actual beginning of the text, and then slowly going through each of the names of who's attending this Dharma assembly. And so last week, if people remember, we talked about Mahakāshyapa, Venerable Mahakāshyapa, which was you could say the foremost in ascetic practices amongst the Buddha's disciples. And the next on the list is Venerable Shariputra. So usually we start by reciting the sutra text, but I know not everyone has it in front of you. So we will maybe just launch right into the sutra lecture on the name Venerable Shariputra. So Jin-He and myself have actually done some research and thought to explain who Venerable Shariputra is. We hear his name a lot, but sometimes we might not really know who he is. You know, what did he do? What inspired him onto the Buddha path, to cultivate the way? Who were his friends, right? What were the qualities that allowed him to be the foremost disciple in wisdom? So there's a lot of things that you could say maybe we might not know about Venerable Shariputra that Jin-He and myself was thinking it would be nice to share with everyone. Because we listen to the sutras a lot in the monastery, and we always in the beginning they list the disciples, right? Venerable Mahakāshyapa, Venerable Shariputra, Venerable Mahamoggallana, and they're just kind of names that pass our ears, and we don't really have a direct connection to them because we might not know their life story. But if the people in the story was like our father, our mother, Reverend Hong Shi, or other people we know, we go, oh, I can see why this was spoken, how this was spoken, and to whose potential. So we thought going over Venerable Shariputra's life would give people a grounding in understanding how the Dharma connects with the disciples of the Buddha. That makes sense. Another element, just so people know, Venerable Shariputra is an important figure in many sutras, like the Heart Sutra, right? We say Se Li Zi, right? In the Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva teaches Venerable Shariputra, Prajna Paramita. Just tonight we recited the shorter Amitabha Sutra, and that was the Buddha teaching Shariputra about Amitabha Buddha. So in the Lotus Sutra, Venerable Shariputra is the one who requests the Dharma from the Buddha to speak the Lotus Sutra. So he is somebody we see quite a lot. And so to know who he is, I think is a really good thing. So we'll just start with Venerable Shariputra. You want to add something?
So it was really interesting doing research on Venerable Shariputra this time, because the last time I read about Venerable Shariputra's life, it was as a layperson, and it was many years ago. It was this book called The Great Disciples of the Buddha, written by Nyando Thera.
Yeah. Nyando Thera. I don't know how to say his name.
So it's published under Wisdom Publications, and it has all the life stories of all the great disciples of the Buddha. And this time around, reading it again, but from the perspective of, I would say, fellow monk. And I saw a different side of the Venerable, and it was his. Even now, I still think of the Buddha's disciples being arhats as. I have this stereotype version of what an arhat is, as in someone who's always cool, composed, but somewhat detached, like not quite, like someone who doesn't smile or laugh, or not quite human, an arhat. But the more I read about Venerable Shariputra, the more I realized that he was a really humane person. He was very caring. He had a lot of patience. He had a lot of compassion. He had a lot of wisdom to go along with all of that. So we hope by going through his life and some stories of how he became to be Shariputra, you would also see a side of Shariputra Venerable Shariputra that's really human.
Actually, just one more thing to add in terms of if people want to relate to the lecture in different ways, is the Buddha actually praised both Venerable Shariputra and Venerable Mahamagdayana as good exemplars of the monastic path. I know recently we had the adulting retreat, Adulting in the Dharma, up in Sudana Center with Reverend Heng Sher, and he talked a lot about role models and how in American society, in some ways we have very few good, you could say good male role models as one of the major issues in our society. We end up having role models that are like the cowboy, or the James Bond, these kind of tough characters who are out to break the rules. So we have in the Dharma really inspiring you could say male role models, in this case Venerable Shariputra, who's really, you could say, I don't know, word's not tough. He's self-reliant, courageous, but compassionate, caring, as Jin-He just said. So this is another way of seeing how we can be people for men, but I think equally valid for women to see what is the potential of a human being, that there's an inner strength that we can have that's coupled with a compassionate, sensitive heart. And that's what we see in Shariputra. So if we want to listen to his story, we can think about it in our own life, saying, so what are the qualities of him that I admire, I want to learn from, I want to be like?
So I actually have the right in front of us, supposedly what the Buddha actually said, that what Jin-Chuan was just saying about Venerable Shariputra and Venerable Mahamagdayana. Did I say that right? You're not making it easy for me. Okay, so usually when in the text or in the life stories, when Venerable Shariputra is spoken of, it's like Venerable Mahamudgyana.
So I have it here.
Right.
Galyayana.
Venerable
Galyayana.
Malgalyayana. Yeah.
What? He is the one with the foremost in spiritual powers. Oftentimes he's portrayed with blue. Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Mahamagalyana. Mu Jianlian.
Yeah.
Mu Jianlian is much easier in Chinese.
Venerable Mu Jianlian is a lot
And
easier
we
for
could
me.
maybe do the Pali. The Pali version is Mogalyana.
Mogalyana.
Master Pala did say that.
Yeah.
Netzer did say that. Yes.
Yes.
Ulampa. Yeah, you could Mahamagalyana. Yeah. Our Sanskrit's not so good.
Thank you so much. That makes it so much easier.
Okay.
So they're like twin brothers. And Jin-Chuan will take the first part of tonight's lecture as to how like they were born on the same day, for example. Although tonight we are just concentrating on Venerable Shariputra, but he has a lot of similarities. So when the Buddha spoke of them, of Venerable Shariputra, he would often include Venerable Mahamalgyana. Okay, got that right. So this is what the Buddha said. He said, a monk of faith, O bhikkhus, should cherish this right aspiration. Oh, may I become such as Shariputra and Moggallana. For Shariputra and Moggallana are the model and standard for my bhikkhu disciples. So that's how the Buddha treated them, and that's how he wanted the rest of the monks to see them. And the Buddha said, associate, O monks, with Shariputra and Moggallana, and keep company with them. They are wise bhikkhus and helpers of their fellow monks. Shariputra is like a mother who brings forth, and Moggallana is like a nurse to the newborn child. Shariputra trains his pupils in the fruition of stream entry, and Moggallana trains them for the highest goal.
So the Buddha told bhikkhus like Jin-He and myself, they should be our heroes. So, so we'll study them a little bit tonight, what a monk hero would look like. And for everyone here, we can all see what we can learn from their example. Okay, so to begin, Venerable Shariputra was born as a Brahmin in India in a village called Upatissa. Sorry, I would probably get scolded by my Sanskrit teacher for my Sanskrit pronunciations. But essentially, he was born in this village, and during that time, they would often name the child by the place that they grew up in. So when I was Umapatissa, born in Nalaka. Yeah, I saw two places, but also born in Nalaka was another one. And he later, his Mahamaglyana was also born in another village nearby called Kolika. And so Venerable Mahamaglyana was also called Kolika growing up. The mom of Shariputra was named Shari. I know we have a friend in our community named Shari. And so Putra means son. So son of Shari. Right? So Shari does have a son, and so you could say that's Shariputra, the son of Shari. His father's name was Tisa, although different places on the internet say different things. I think he also has another name, but usually he's called Tisa. And as I mentioned before, he was born on the same day with Venerable, I'll use his Pali name, Moggallana. And they were best friends. They were born on the same day, shared pretty much everything together. They would go off to play together. And how it's described is that they would have 500, they were almost like leaders of their gang of friends. They're like the coolest kids on the block, right? And all the kids would look up to them. And so they would have 500 kids each that would go and follow them off to play. They would say that Shariputra's friends would be carried on palanquins, which are these like, what they carry people, like people on these little kind of carriers, You see these like the royalty in England or these, rich people, they would be carried on, So these kids were very wealthy. And then the Mahamaglyana's friends, or Kolika, his friends would be coming on carriages. So there'd be all these 500 friends all running around playing together. And so you could say maybe they had a very fun childhood, right? Very wealthy, very fun, everything they wanted. And one day, they went to a festival. And this festival is one where you could say it's like maybe our Disneyland or something, or like our circus. All these, spectacles and entertainments, everything is there. And so both of them are watching the shows for the first day. And they're having a lot of fun, excited with all their friends. They go for the second day. And they all bought their tickets already for the third day. And that night, on the second night, they are both sleeping, going to go to sleep, and they can't really get to sleep. And you know why they can't really get to sleep? They're kind of laying there, and they're thinking to themselves, gosh, what I'm watching isn't really that meaningful. We're watching all these plays of, these legends and myths about people doing all this and that. And it's actually talking a lot about the suffering of the world. You can see all the pain and anguish, but people aren't paying any attention to it. We're just making fun of it and just making it a big entertainment. This is really a waste of time. This is not worth it. I really should look for some way of deliverance, they say, a way to liberation, a way out of suffering, to seek after nirvana. So they both, the same night, so these two are somehow maybe psychically connected somehow. They both independently have the same thought, right? So it'd be kind of like us here. I don't know what people's thoughts are, but people aren't at a party, watching football, or I don't know what's on this new Chinese New Year, I don't know what New Year Eve, what they're showing on TV. But we're not just kind of watching the TV tube, unless you're watching the YouTube channel, right? And just kind of zoning out. But in fact, there's a deeper principle being investigated. And so they're at that point looking at something a little bit deeper than just the entertainment that they were getting from their senses. And so they went to the festival the next day, on the third day. And one of them asked the other, saying, you know what? You don't look that happy. What's wrong? What's wrong with you? And then one of them goes, well, last night I was, this might be a little bit strange, but I was thinking to myself, gosh, this is a waste of time. We're just here getting all entertained, and in the end we're just going to die, and we're just going to suffer in this cycle over and over again, because during that time they believe in this kind of cycle of birth and death. And so they're like, this is a lot of suffering. I thought, wouldn't it be much better if we went out and found a way out of suffering, found a way to liberation, found a way out of samsara? So the other one heard that and said, then the other one asked him, but you look pretty upset too. You don't look that happy. What's wrong with you? He says, I had the exact same thought. I had the exact same thought last night. And I was thinking, gosh, wouldn't it be good if we went off to become ascetics and try to find a way to liberation? So they thought, good idea, let's do that. And so they left the festival and went off as wandering ascetics. I'm sure their parents weren't very happy. Jin-He will talk a little bit about his mom, who wasn't very happy with kids going off and becoming monastics. And all 500 of their friends, because they're the cool kids on the block, followed them to become ascetics as well. So they went off looking for teachers. And who did they find? They found a teacher named Sanjaya. And he was a teacher who actually taught, they called agnosticism. So he would actually refrain from holding any views about any particular religious belief. Like, oh, is there a life after death? Well, I don't know. We can't know that, so who knows? I don't know. So he would just kind of be agnostic around everything. So he had a very kind of systematic philosophy around this. And so Venerable Shariputra and Venerable Mahamaglayana both studied under him with their 500 disciples each, or their 500 friends each. So they have like 1,000 people, right? They're studying with this teacher who has his own following already. And so they're studying with him, and over a period of time, they think to themselves, gosh, this Dharma doesn't lead to the end of suffering. It doesn't seem to be complete. So they talk to each other and they think, well, we might need to go find another teacher, or find another way. And so they talk to the teacher. The teacher tells them, I've taught you everything I know. This is what I know. And so they go, well, this isn't the end of suffering. We got to find an answer. I think people know the Buddha's life story, also know that the Buddha went through a similar process where he went off, studied under different teachers, and then at the end went off on his own to cultivate the way. But with Venerable Shariputra and Venerable Mahamadhyana, they didn't have, you could say, maybe the Buddha's good roots and, you could say, perfect wisdom. So when they went off to India looking for a teacher and trying to cultivate the way, they didn't find an answer. Finally, after going all around India, they came back to where they started from, their hometown, and they made a pact with each other. So I said they were really good friends. They made a pact with each other and said, okay, let's double our chances at finding the way out, finding the deathless, finding liberation. So you go one way, I go the other, and whoever finds the deathless first will come and tell the other person. Right? So they made a pact, made a contract with one another. And so they kind of, you could say, went to different places. And at one point, there's a story about Venerable Asaji. The Buddha at this time has now went through his process and actually become a Buddha and started teaching. He started teaching the initial group of Arhat disciples, his initial disciples who actually became Arhats. And one of them was Venerable Asaji. And so Venerable Asaji went and he was walking on the road. And then Venerable Shariputra looked and goes, wow, that guy looks really composed. That person looks very serene. It would be like, I know probably Jin-He or myself for sure don't look like that, but Venerable Asaji was extremely impressive, right? Maybe myself. Maybe Jin-He, wow, I'm very inspired. And so they're looking at him and he thinks, wow, this person, he perhaps has the answer to the deathless. He has the way out, right? But Venerable Shariputra, he's not kind of like it was me. I'd probably just run up to Venerable Asaji. Okay, so tell me, what are you doing? Why are you here, right? This kind of American zeal, just jumping to do something. Venerable Shariputra said, oh wait, he's going on alms round. I should wait and let him go on alms round. So he waits, and lets Venerable Asaji go on alms round, gets his food, and then Venerable Shariputra goes up to him and actually serves him with water, helps take care of him, takes care of his needs. And afterwards, he asked Venerable Asaji, Venerable One, who is your teacher? Your countenance, your demeanor is so pure and serene, so peaceful. Surely you've realized the deathless. Who is your teacher? What is the teachings that he teaches you? And so at that point, Venerable Asaji says, I have studied under he says, let me see, he says, there is, O friend, the great recluse, you could say the great ascetic, right? The great rishi, who has gone forth from the Shakya clan. The Shakya is Shakyamuni Buddha. He is the Shakya clan, that was his family name. Under the Blessed One, that's the Buddha, I have gone forth. The Blessed One is my teacher, and it is his dharma that I profess. So then Venerable Shariputra asked Venerable Asaji, what are the teachings that he teaches? So Venerable Asaji is very humble. He says, I just started becoming a monk. I'm only a couple months old here. So I really don't know my master's teachings that well. You should go. But yeah, he was an Arhat. Yeah, he was an Arhat. So they were much more, you could say, humble and also much more accomplished. I mean, just a couple of months, he's an Arhat disciple, right? And so he says, I don't really know my teacher's teaching that well. You should go meet my teacher. But Venerable Shariputra said, please though, can you just tell me something, just a little bit? So Venerable Asaji gives him a quote, which is very famous in the Buddhist sutras, and he says,
now everyone concentrates really hard.
use the mic, other than people online won't get what you just said.
Okay. So now everyone concentrate really hard as
Yeah.
Jin-Chuan should read this.
Reads the quote, yeah.
And we'll tell you why.
So he says, he gave a verse. He said, the perfect one has told the cause of causally arisen things, and what brings their cessation to. Such is the doctrine taught by the great monk. And at that point, Venerable Shariputra hears this verse and becomes a stream enterer on the spot. he sees the Dharma and he sees that as all conditions things come into being, they cease to be. So I think when Jin-He was asking everyone to concentrate, did anybody wake up?
Did that work for anyone else?
Did anybody wake up? You heard the Dharma? So there's probably multiple layers. If we want to actually do an analysis, what's the difference? We can think to ourselves, what's the difference? How come Shariputra woke up just hearing that verse, and how come we maybe didn't? So one element is we could look at Venerable Shariputra's actual life, like what he did in his life, and the other is how you could say maybe even the confidence he had in the teacher, because like we say, my virtue is definitely not like Venerable Asaji's, right? So there's a confidence, I'm sure, that he saw from seeing somebody who was an Arhat disciple, that he says, well, there's something here I want to learn. And so he learned this Dharma, which seems to us very simple, right? The conditioned things come into being, they cease to be. And the Buddha explains their causes and explains how they cease to be. So after he heard this teaching, what does he do? He goes and he doesn't just run off to go see the Buddha, right? As I said, by myself, oh yeah, I got the answer and I better go take a look who this guy is. Now the first thought he had was the pact I made with my friend, right? Mahamaggalyana. And so he goes and looks for Mahamaggalyana, finds him, he goes, actually Mahamaggalyana looks at him and goes, wow, you look pretty good today. You look very peaceful and happy. What happened? Did you find the deathless? He says, yes, I found the deathless. And he says, well, who's the teacher? And what was his teaching? He says, well, the teacher is the sage of the Shakyan clan, Shakyamuni, and his teaching, and he gave that quote, right? The perfect one has told the cause of causally arisen things, and what brings their cessation to. Such is the doctrine taught by the great monk. And upon hearing that, Venerable Mahamaggalyana also became a stream enterer. Yes, sure. Yeah, both the Buddha. Different titles, you could say, for the Buddha, different ways of calling on him. And so he heard this line. He also became a stream enterer, right? So they're very good roots. And they then think, okay, so what's next? Yes. He didn't hear in English. That's true. Not that translation, I'm sure. Yeah. I had the Pali. Yeah, he didn't have English. They had it probably in a different language. I actually had the Pali here a moment ago, but I deleted it because my pronunciation probably would be very good, and I'm sure people probably would not have awoken from listening to it. But yeah, it wasn't in English. So those who are English speakers who like to do translation, maybe you can work on that verse. If you get it just right with just the right words, maybe people can wake up when they hear it, right? Okay. Okay, so you want to add something?
I don't think that's how it works.
How it works. So then what happens is Venerable Shariputra is actually also a very filial disciple. So he thinks to himself, before he goes and sees the Buddha, he says to Venerable Mahamaggalyana, we should tell our teacher about the Buddha, because he would be able to learn from the Buddha as well, and he would be of great merit for him, and be for his benefit. So they go find their previous teacher, Venerable Sanjaya, right? Sanjaya, who was the one I said was agnostic with many disciples. So they go and they find him. And there's a very interesting discussion here because Venerable Sanjaya is talking to them as well. And they talk to him and say, well, we just found this really good teacher who is teaching the way out of suffering, to liberation, to the deathless. We should all go and study with him. And Venerable Sanjaya is kind of torn. Well, yeah, I kind of want to study with him, but at the same time, I'm a pretty established teacher. I've got all these disciples. I'm very well known. I'm, very respected and honored. It's just not fitting. In the sutra, it says, it would be like a lake becoming a little mud puddle, going from the status of a teacher to the status of a student, becoming a student of, Shakyamuni. Right, so he thought to himself, "Gosh, it's just not a. That's just. I don't think I could do that." Remember, Shariputra says, "No, don't think like that. It's much better to be a student of the Buddha than just going on in our confusion." But Venerable Sanjaya just can't give up the position of being a teacher. So he finally says, "No, I can't go. You guys, I can't go. Actually, would you guys stay here with me? If you stay with me, I'll let you be the co-teachers with me." and we could be, really famous, And Venerable Shariputra and Venerable Mahamagdhyana says, no, thank you. We've already decided we were going to go see the Buddha. So they go. They go to see the Buddha. And actually, Venerable Sanjaya's disciples see Venerable Shariputra and Venerable Mahamagdhyana leaving, and they're all inspired to follow along. Oh, let's all follow along. So this makes Venerable Sanjaya very anxious. All his disciples are leaving. And so they actually say he coughs up blood. He's so upset he coughs up blood. But then half of the disciples who are leaving see the teacher not going as well. So half of them decide, okay, let's maybe not follow. Let's just stay with him. So then half of them stay. So the other half follow Venerable Shariputra and Venerable Mahamagdhyana to again go and see the Buddha. So when they see the Buddha, you can add in.
So there's one thing I found as we were doing the reading. What's his name? Sanjaya? So his response to Venerable Shariputra was really interesting. When Venerable Shariputra was asking him to go and see the Buddha, he asked Venerable Shariputra a question. He said, are there more fools or wise people in this world? And then the Venerable answered him, fools are many, wise are few. And Sanjaya said, well, then let the wise go to the Buddha and let the fools come to me. That was his response.
So I guess he gets a lot of disciples. Okay, so off they go to see the Buddha, right? They go off to see the Buddha. And when they go there, they all have a following of 250 disciples plus some more disciples. So they've got a lot of people following them. They're just kind of like natural leaders. So they're off to see the Buddha. And the Buddha sees them from a distance and says, oh, this is a blessed pair of disciples. They're going to be very important. And as they approach, they pay their respects and they ask the Buddha for higher ordination, to essentially leave home under the Buddha. And so the Buddha says, Ehi bhikkhu, right? Ehi bhikkhu, come bhikshu. And that's it. That's their ordination. He just says, come bhikshu, and they're now ordained as monks. In the Buddhist time, they tell the stories about during those times when the Buddha says that, the lay people, they were lay people, their hair would just fall off their head immediately, and then a robe would just appear over their shoulder, and they have a bowl, and they would be ready to go. So unlike now, where we have all these precepts, we take the 250 precepts for a monk, a bhikshu, and the nuns have 300 some. At that time, there weren't any precepts yet. Wasn't the monastic code. It was just come bhikshu, because all the disciples at that time were pretty much arhants, or at least a stream enterer. So they were very well behaved, unlike later what happened. So he has these two become monks. And so he then continues to teach the Dharma. And he teaches the Dharma to all the people assembled there. And actually all of the followers of both Venerable Shariputra and Venerable Mahamagdhyana become arhants. They wake up. But Venerable Shariputra and Venerable Mahamagdhyana still are stream enterers, interestingly enough. And only later, until Venerable Mahamagdhyana goes off and cultivates on his own for a week, and then Venerable Shariputra cultivates for 2 weeks, that they then actually realize arhatship. They realize the deathless. And the story for Venerable Shariputra, for him becoming an arhat, is a very famous story. This is the one that we usually know. If you hear Master Hua tell the story of Venerable Shariputra, Master Hua tells it slightly differently. He says that Venerable Shariputra had an uncle named Diganikaya, or long Diganaka, which means long nails. And it says that because he went off to study all the various, you could say the disciplines or the studies, the Vedas in the Indian tradition, so much that he didn't even have time to cut his nails, because he wanted to come and debate the Buddha, or debate his. Maybe I'll just tell the story Master Hua usually tells, and then we'll get it. So what happens is, when Venerable Shariputra is in his mom's womb, right, Shari's womb, before his uncle would debate with his mom and would always win. But after she became pregnant with Venerable Shariputra, his sister would always beat him in arguments. So he got a little bit nervous, like, this kid of mine, this nephew of mine is going to be really smart. I better go and learn something to be able to out-debate him. So he goes off, to various places to study, to basically be able to out-debate his nephew because he doesn't want to be shown up. So finally he learns all these things. As I said, his nails grow long. He comes back and he meets his sister and he asks, okay, I'm ready. Where's my nephew? And his sister tells him, well, your nephew already became a monk under the Buddha. He says, what? He became a monk under the Buddha? That's not right. He says, I'm going to out-debate the Buddha. If I out-debate the Buddha, then I'll get back Shariputra. But if the Buddha out-debates me, then I'll give him my head. Right? This is the story that the Master Hua tells. And so he goes and he sees, goes up to the Buddha, and he tells the Buddha, you stole my nephew. I'm here to debate you. If I win, you better give back my nephew. And if you win, I'll give you my head. And the Buddha tells him, did I force your nephew to leave home under me? I mean, was that something I asked him to do? He says, no, it doesn't matter. You took my nephew, you tricked him, I want him back. And so he debates, so he says, okay, the Buddha, okay, so what position do you take? What do you want to start with? And so this is actually the same in both of them, except in the Theravada version, they say he's actually, this Diganaka is actually Shariputra's nephew. So it's a little bit different story. So he goes and he says, my position is I do not accept any view. I do not accept any view. I accept no view. Right? And so the Buddha goes, oh, okay. So do you accept your own view of no views? So in the Master Hua's version story, he says at that point, Diganaka realizes that he's kind of caught. So then he gets scared. He runs away because he doesn't want to give up his head. Right? So he runs away, and halfway, running back to his home, he thinks to himself, gosh, I made a promise to the Buddha. I better live up to my promises. I'm an honorable person, so I better give him my life. So he goes back to the Buddha, and the Buddha says, oh, you're back. Why are you back? He goes, well, I promised you I'd give you my head. So now I'm here, I got my knife, I'm going to give you my head. The Buddha says, no, don't do that. What's much better is if you actually become a monk and cultivate the way. Okay, so that's the story about the long nails in our version with Master Hua. In the Theravada version, how they describe it is, he actually says, I have no view, right? And the Buddha says to him, do you accept your views of no views? And of course, at that point, he's cut a little bit, but he says, well, I think it's all the same. It's all the same. It's all the same. No, I kind of accept. So the Buddha says, well, there's some people who say that, and they really don't attach to any views. And there's some people who say that, who are still actually attached to some views. And then he kind of thinks, and he says, well, the people who actually accept all views, those people are very far from liberation. They're all bound up. The people who actually try to get rid of views, they're actually close to liberation. They're not bonded. And so the Venerable Diganaka at that point is, a little bit proud. Yeah, the Buddha agrees with me. No views. So the Buddha goes, well, however, there are some people who think that everything is, I accept every position. I think to themselves, this is the truth, everything else is wrong. And they get into debates and arguments and fighting with other people. And there are some people who think that sometimes I accept some positions, sometimes I don't accept some positions. And they think that's right, always right, and everything else is wrong. And so they get in debates and fight with other people. And some people who think I accept no views, and they think that view is right and every other view is wrong. And they get in fights and things. He says, all those ways are unskillful. They lead to fighting, consternation. Rather, what you want to have, if you really want to be liberated, is to realize this is not the truth. This is, I would not say not the truth. This is not the only truth. Everything else is wrong. Then it's not to be attached to views. And at that point, this Venerable Diganaka is pretty much kind of stunned. Because he realized that he was maybe attached to his view, and the Buddha was teaching something that was more profound. And the Buddha was essentially then start teaching, so how do you detach from views altogether and not be caught by anything? And he goes through and teaches him the contemplation of the body, how the body is impermanent, not self and suffering, so that he detaches from that. And then he goes to feelings. He says there's pleasant feelings, unpleasant feelings. Feelings are neither pleasant nor unpleasant. And those are constantly changing. They arise and they pass away. They cease. So they shouldn't be clung to either. And at that point, Venerable Shariputra is actually there fanning the Buddha. He's in the back fanning the Buddha. And he thinks, wow, the Buddha teaches direct knowledge, direct seeing for the way of liberation, the way of letting go of all views, and for disenchantment and dispassion to liberation. And as he's thinking that, he actually becomes an arhat. So he becomes an arhat, and his nephew, in the Theravada version, hears that and becomes a stream enterer, sees the Dharma, that all conditioned Dharmas arise, and then in that way, all conditioned Dharmas then cease. And so he says they have a vision of the Dharma. The stream enterer is essentially someone who has sight of the Dharma. They have a glimpse of the Dharma, and then they can then practice it. So they have a kind of initial, you can say a taste of it that gets them into the stream of the sages. That's why they call them the stream enterer or stream winner, is because they're no longer in the stream of samsara. They enter the stream of the sages. So that's the story how Venerable Shariputra woke up, how he became an arhat. Okay? Yeah. So the next is Jin-He. Will start from after Venerable Shariputra as arhat disciple.
So what Jin-Chuan should left out just now was the first time the Buddha saw them, Venerable Shariputra and Venerable Mahamoggana, as they were walking towards the Buddha actually said, "Oh, these two will be my chief disciples," before they were even ordained. And right after that incident, when Venerable Shariputra became an arhat, the Buddha announced to everyone, he said, "These two will be my chief disciples from now on." And then there were some monks there that were unhappy because they said, these two are newcomers. Actually, they were the newest ordained monks in the whole group. And they were saying there are a lot more senior disciples, like the first five who became monks. Shouldn't they be the chief disciples? How about then they had a list, like, how about the 55 monks? And then there's a list of they call them the 30 auspicious group of monks. And finally, the three Kashyapa brothers, they said, how come they are not made chief disciples? Because they are senior. Then the Buddha said, well, it's because a long, long time ago, Venerable Shariputra and Venerable Mahamoggana made a vow that they wanted to be the chief disciple of a Buddha one day. So this reminds me, there's a new Star Wars movie out, right? Does it have that rolling introduction? All the Star Wars movie I've seen have that a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Does the new one have that as well? No? Anyone's watched it yet? Okay. This is the original Star Wars because Venerable Shariputra, during the time of, the Buddha Anomadasi. This was the 18th Buddha before Buddha Shakyamuni. So if you come backwards, before Buddha Shakyamuni, the other Buddha, the Buddha before him, 18 Buddhas. So a very, very long time ago. The Buddha calls it an incalculable eon. So here's the Buddha explaining to all the group of monks. So during that time, Shariputra was born as a person called Sarada. And he was born in a very wealthy family. And when his father died, he inherited all the fortune of his family. And he had the same thought as when he was Venerable Shariputra. He said, one day my body will end. And so where will all these riches take me? So he decided to be an ascetic. He decided to be a monk. So what he did was, he mastered the meditation because he had the skills. And he also had followers. And at that time that the Buddha Anomadasi, during his meditation, he was made aware of Shariputra, was known as Sarada. So he paid Sarada a visit because he knew Sarada was ripe. And then when he came, Sarada recognized, he didn't know who the Buddha was, but he saw that the Buddha had the physical characteristics. How many? 32 physical major hallmarks, physical marks of a Buddha, and 84 minor. AD. Okay. So he saw that the Buddha was special, but he didn't know why. So let me check my notes. So he invited the Buddha to sit, and he gave the Buddha food. And the Buddha had 1,000 Arhat monks who came along with him. So what Sarada did was he held up, just like now with Buddha Shakyamuni, when he was fanning the Buddha, he too stood behind the Buddha but offered a canopy of flowers, and he held up above the Buddha's head to shield the Buddha as a sign of respect. And he did this for 2 whole weeks. The Buddha entered dhyana and he sat there for 2 whole weeks. And Sarada at that time, he just held it there without moving, without feeling impatient. So then, that Buddha also had 2 chief disciples. Apparently, every Buddha always has 2 chief disciples. So after 2 weeks, when the Buddha came out from dhyana, he made the 2 chief disciples speak. And Shariputra, or Sarada at that time, he was so moved by the 2 chief disciples that he said, I'm going to be like them one day. So apparently during that time, it's kind of like history repeats itself. His followers all became arhats when the 2 chief disciples spoke, except Sarada. Why? Because he had the thought, he had the aspiration or the vow. He said, one day I will be a chief disciple to a Buddha. So he went to the Buddha, he bowed, and he held the Buddha's feet. And he said, my offering of holding the flowers above you, I would like to offer that to one day that I will be a chief disciple of a Buddha. And that Buddha then looked into the future and said, oh, you know what? That will happen. And he got a prediction. So
I wanted to add, because this is actually very important in terms of where I see a linkage between Mahayana and Theravada, is that even in the writing there, he says that, so why is it that Venerable Shariputra and Venerable Mahamagdhyana took longer than their disciples to become arhats? Like I asked that question initially. It says the reason's because they made vows to become the chief disciple. And because they made vows to become chief disciples, the amount of paramitas, the paramis, they had to perfect in order to get there was much more. So they had to cultivate for longer periods of time to be able to realize to be a chief disciple rather than just becoming an arhat. So that sounds actually a little bit familiar with our bodhisattva vows, that we make vows to become a Buddha, that there's, you could say, greater time and transformation required so that we can ultimately realize Buddhahood. So I want to make that. You can continue with the story? I have one more thing on that story. Okay, so the other thing on that story really struck me is it's kind of reminded me of the 6th Patriarch Sutra, right? The 6th Patriarch comes to the monastery and all the monks are complaining, or not even complaining, they actually try to kill him. So this is even worse. So at least all these arhat disciples are, I think they probably are just trying to figure out what's going on. They're probably not like unhappy or feeling this is unfair, right? But we see this pattern in history that, you know, the younger disciples come and they actually have real accomplishment, and the people are trying to make sense of it because they're stuck in this kind of seniority. And the Buddha actually responded, which I thought was very interesting. He said, monks, actually, I'm showing no favoritism and I have no preference. He says, I'm only responding or granting according to their wishes. I'm according to their wishes. I'm according to their aspirations. That's why they're chief disciples. That's very interesting. It's not because the Buddha's going, let me look at all these disciples. I really like that one. He's really done a good job today. He's really, flattered me a little bit over here.
Interview process.
Yeah, interview process. Are you really qualified for being a chief disciple? I don't know. You don't have enough virtue. Okay, next one. Right? No, he sees their aspiration. He says, I'm just matching their aspiration. So it's very interesting. It's a very different way of thinking about how we interact, right? So.
Okay. So at this time, we thought it would be interesting to go back and because in the Jataka tales, there's a lot of, basically there's about, I think 500 over stories that the Buddha told that are listed as the Jataka tales. And countless stories have Shariputra, their relationship with the Buddha goes back a long, long way. There are times when either the Buddha is a human and Shariputra is an animal, or Shariputra is an animal and the Buddha is what did I say? Or vice versa, the relationship changes. Sometimes one is a teacher and one is a student. Sometimes the Buddha becomes a student of Shariputra. And there's one story actually that involves, let me see. This is the story of the rabbit in the moon. Does anyone here know about the rabbit in the moon? How many know about rabbit in the moon? Put up your hand. Or see, you can actually see a rabbit in the moon. No? 1, 2. I grew up with that story, and every time I see the full moon, I see an image of a rabbit. And for those of you who don't see it, later on we'll have a slideshow, because this year I had a white Christmas. I think it was my first white Christmas ever. So we have a slideshow of Snow Mountain. I went with Pedro and Michael, as well as some pictures from our adulting retreat led by Reverend Hang Shui. So I have a picture of a rabbit in the moon that I will show you. But I grew up with that story. In the Jataka tales, as how the Buddha told it, it was slightly different. So in this tale, we have the Buddha who was a rabbit, okay, hence the rabbit in the moon. We have Venerable Shariputra, who was, let me see, a monkey. We have Venerable Ananda, who was an otter. And we have Venerable Mahamoggana, who was a jackal. So we have 4 animals. And in this story, the Buddha, who was the rabbit, was kind of like their teacher. He was very wise, and he would tell them, he would teach them the precepts. And on this particular occasion, he was looking at the moon and said, oh, tomorrow is an auspicious day. So he told his friends, he said, tomorrow is an auspicious day. So what you shall do is, if you see any person who comes looking for food, you shall offer food to this person. So the next day, you have Venerable Ananda as the author. He found some fish. So he took the fish home with him. And he wanted to eat the fish later. And then Venerable Mahamoggana he actually went to someone's house and he found a pot of milk. And he looked around and said, this pot of milk belong to anyone? Obviously, there was no one in the house. And by asking, he thought, okay, I can take the pot of milk. So he took the pot of milk home, wanting to consume it. And then Shariputra, the monkey, Venerable Shariputra was a monkey then, he found some mangoes in a tree. And he took the mangoes back. And then the Buddha, who was a rabbit, rabbits, I guess, only eat grass, so he was eating grass. And then a thought came to him and said, well, I told my friends that if anyone comes looking for food today, we should offer food. But I have nothing to offer. All I have is this grass, but I can't offer grass to people to eat. Then he had a thought. He said, if someone comes asking for food, I shall offer my body to this person. And he meant it with all sincerity as an offering. So when he had this thought, Chakra in his heavenly palace, do you know what happened? Did his seat get warm or it quaked or something? Because of such a selfless act, it affected how Chakra felt. And he said, what's going on? I have to investigate. So he realized that the rabbit had made this vow, and he decided to test the rabbit. So he came down to earth, dressed as a mendicant, like an ascetic, like a monk, asking for alms. So first he went to Venerable Ananda, who was the author, and he said, oh, I'm looking for food. I'm hungry and I haven't eaten. Do you have any food to offer me? And he was offered the fish, but he did not take the fish and said, okay, thank you, I'll come back later. So he did this with Venerable Mahamoggana, who was the jackal, who offered him the milk that he had kept for himself. He did it with Venerable Shariputra, who had the mangoes, but he did not eat all of them. Then he went to the rabbit. So he went to the rabbit and said, I'm really hungry. I haven't eaten for 3 days. Do you have any food for me? And the rabbit was really happy. He said, today I will offer you something which I have never offered anyone before. I will offer you my body. And because I willingly offer it, you are not breaking any precepts by accepting my body as food. So he told that mendicant, he said, I will go and prepare myself, but as I go do that, can you build a fire? So when he came back, there was a fire, but because this mendicant was actually Lord Chakra, he used his magic powers to make a fire appear. So it is said in the Jataka tales, as how the Buddha told it himself. He said, the rabbit with full of joy gave a cry and leapt into the flames. But when he landed, he felt really strange. He said, what's going on? He said, instead of the fire burning me, I actually feel really nice and comfortable. It's very cool. Then he looked at the mendicant and said, what is the meaning of this? What's going on? And then the mendicant changed himself into Chakra. And then he said, oh, I have come to test you. And because of your selfless act, I shall now do something so that people will remember you for an eon to come. So it is described as then Chakra, he stretched out his hand, and him being Lord God, he stretched out his hand, he grabbed a mountain, and it is said that he squeezed the essence from the mountain, and he used that to paint the image of the rabbit on the moon, so everyone would know about the rabbit. So that's how we have the rabbit appearing on the full moon.
Just comment. So that's actually another very important principle, I think, just so people who maybe are first time really hearing a full, complete story of one of the Buddha's disciples. I actually think this book, The Great Disciples of the Buddha, that describes the Buddhist disciples' kind of whole life story, is very interesting to read, because you can see they are, you could say, quite a few different assumptions about how things actually happen. Like how we describe in the Jataka tales, is actually each of the disciples have many, many past lives. That was just kind of an assumed way of seeing the world in this kind of cosmology. And so their lifetime after lifetime being together, cultivating together, sometimes doing good things, sometimes doing bad things, allow them to manifest in this life in order to cultivate together to wake up. And again, this is something that's referenced in the Mahayana text as well. That oftentimes the Buddha, especially in the Lotus Sutra, actually says to Venerable Shariputra that actually you've made vows to become a Buddha a long, long time ago. You just don't remember. So within what I see is actually very interesting. There's if you really look at the Theravada text, you actually can see the seeds and the strands into a lot of the Mahayana teachings. Yeah.
So there's a lot more to be said. Do you think we should continue with Venerable Shariputra like in the following lecture, or because then I can jump to? Okay, there are a lot more stories about Venerable Shariputra, but I think I shall like to speak about how he saved his mom. Yeah, because my mom's birthday was yesterday. Yeah, so this can be my birthday gift to my mom. Not really, but so Shariputra had 3 brothers and 3 sisters. Okay, meaning his mother had 7 children, and all 7 of them became monks and nuns. Okay, his 3 brothers became monks, his 3 sisters became nuns, and all of them became arhats. His mom was not happy. Okay, his mom was really unhappy. In fact, his mom tried to marry off the youngest brother when he was young, but on the day of his marriage, he saw his future bride's grandmother, which was 120 years old. He had this vision, oh, my bride is going to look like that in the future, and he didn't want to get married. So his mom was really, really unhappy. In fact, when his mom, when he dropped by his home, and he brought his fellow monks with him, the mom would abuse them as she fed them food. You know, this is what the mom said. Let me see. Say, oh, you eater of others' livings, meaning you eat people's food. When you fail to get livings of sour rice gruel, you go from house to house among strangers, licking the livings off the backs of ladles. And so it was for this that you gave up the riches of your family and became a monk. You have ruined me. Now go and eat. And this was how she scolded Shariputra when he came back to the house for food once. And then when she was serving his fellow monks, he said, so you are the man who have made my son your page boy. Go on, eat now. And that was how she served the monks. So 1 week before, so one day Shariputra was meditating and a thought came to him and said, do chief disciples leave the world first or do the Buddhas live first? So I guess when you're arhat, death is you look at death very differently. So he contemplated and he realized that all chief disciples depart the world before the Buddha. Then he looked into his own life and he realized he had 1 week left to go. And then he thought of his mom. He said, my mom is the mother of seven arhats, but she has not been converted because she believes in the god Brahma. She was a Hindu. So he went to take leave of the Buddha. He went to the Buddha and he asked for permission and he said that he would like to go and save his mom. But he had to devise a plan first because his mom was not ready. So what he did was, after asking for the Buddha's blessings, and he left, he brought, I think there were about 500 monks who left with him to his mother's house. And when the mother saw him, the first thought the mother had was, why has he come back? What does he want now? Is he planning on becoming a lay person? That was his mother's thought. So he came back home and he told the mom that he would like to have his old room back. He said, can you please prepare my old room because I'm going to stay here, and please prepare food for me and my fellow monks. So the mother did not refuse. The mother went ahead and did all the preparations. And then right after that, Venerable Shariputra fell sick. He had dysentery, and it was so bad that it was said whenever a pill was brought out, a new pill had to be brought in. That was how bad it was. So the mom was worried. The mom was naturally worried. It is said that mothers never forget, how would I say it? A mother shall always remain a mother. You always care for your children. So the mother was actually worried for Shariputra. And she was waiting outside his door. So when Shariputra was sick, Venerable Shariputra was sick, he had visitors who came to ask, to inquire about him and wanted to care for him. But these weren't ordinary visitors. First, he had 4 visitors, which were the 4 heavenly kings. They came, they inquired about Shariputra's health, and they offered their help. Venerable Shariputra just asked them to leave. Then after that came, let me see, Chakra. Lord Chakra came himself. This is Lord God, who has control over the weather and the heavens. And he came and he offered his help to Venerable Shariputra. Again, Venerable Shariputra asked them to leave. And the mother was seeing all this happening, standing right outside his door. And after that came, guess who? The very God that his own mother worshipped, Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma came to Venerable Shariputra's room and offered to be his attendant. And Venerable Shariputra waved them away. So all this puzzled the mom, and the mom came in and asked them, dear son, who were these people? So Venerable Shariputra explained to the mother, oh, the first 4 people were the 4 great kings. Then the mother said, oh, does that mean that you are greater than them? That they come and offer you their services? And Shariputra said, oh, they're just like temple attendants, these 4 heavenly kings. He said, ever since the Buddha came into this world, they have stood guard over him with swords in hand, protecting the Buddha. So the mother, oh, okay. Then mother said, how about the next person? Who was that? Then Venerable Shariputra said, oh, that was Lord Chakra. And the mother said, oh, does that mean that you are also greater than Lord Chakra? And you realize Shariputra, in the way he answered, he didn't say he himself was greater. He put the question, I think he didn't have to say that because they came, but he chose to speak about the Buddha instead rather than himself. So he said, oh, Lord Chakra, he's just like a novice who carries a monk's belongings. when the Buddha returned from the heavens of the 33, Lord Chakra was holding his bowl and robe and descended to earth together with him like an attendant. So the mother was really impressed, man. I was like, oh, okay. And the mother said, then who was your last visitor? And Venerable Shariputra said, oh, that was your own Lord and Master, the Lord Brahma, the great Brahma himself. Then she asked, does that mean that you are greater than Lord Brahma? And Shariputra said, well, yes. He said, on the day the Buddha was born, it is said that 4, not just 1, but 4 Lord Brahmas came to receive the Buddha in the net. And so when the mom heard this, it was said that she was filled with rapture and joy. I mean, if you hear that your son, anyone here has any children, if you hear that your son is held in such high esteem by the very gods that you yourself pray to, so she was filled with rapture and joy. And that was the moment that Venerable Shariputra was waiting for. So rapture and joy is a really important thing to consider, because that's why we hold the precepts. If you look at how the three jewels, is it 3 jewels? Precept, samadhi, wisdom. Three non-optional practices. How does maintaining the precepts lead to wisdom? Lead to concentration or samadhi, which leads to wisdom. If you hold the precepts right, you are filled with a joy and rapture that infuses your whole body, that makes you pliant and soft. Why? Because you know you've not done anything wrong. In your food, you don't do anything to harm living beings. In your speech, you don't say things to upset people. So basically, you not just are guilt-free, but you know you don't do anything wrong. And your mind becomes really soft and pliant, and so does the body. So then Shariputra spoke the Dharma to his mom. And at that moment, the mom became a stream enterer. And can anyone guess what the mother said right after that? Anyone want to guess? The mother said, oh son, why have you held the Dharma from me all these years? Why didn't you just tell me earlier? Okay, I'm paraphrasing, but yeah. So the mom wasn't ready before that. Yeah, at that time the mom was. Yeah. Okay, so I guess it's close to 9:48, and I think we should show the presentation. Does anyone have any questions? One question online?
You want to get a mic? Do you have a mic? Okay. Okay. The question was, is Venerable Mahamoggaliyana also Earth-store Bodhisattva? Well, I know somebody actually in the assembly also mentioned that as well. It's mentioning, I think Master Hua did say that. He said that Venerable Mahamoggaliyana was Earth-store Bodhisattva as manifestation. But I think you have to go look into the sutras to get his commentary on that. I don't know if there's any other places that comes up.
Definitely not in the Pali canon, but in the Thai tradition, there was a monk who recorded this story. I think it'll take maybe a few minutes. It was about how this, so the Thai believe in a version of Earth-store Bodhisattva. They have a monk that goes down to the hells to save living beings. And how they have this story, it is because it is recorded in recent history by a monk who witnessed this event. A wife of a landowner had died. And it is said that when she was alive, and this is on the internet, if you search for it, when she was alive, she was very stingy and miserly with her money, and she didn't do any charity at all. So when she died, the husband, who was a Buddhist, did a lot of things to, donated a lot of things to the Triple Jewel in the wife's name. So what happened was, and how we know this, because the wife came back. The wife came back as a young lady in a different village, in a neighboring village. And as she was growing up, she kept on pestering her parents and telling her parents, I have to go to this village because I have a debt to repay. And no one believed her until she was, I think, maybe 18 years old. And I think at that time the parents took her seriously. And she proved who she was by telling her former husband from her old past life that she said, if you dig that tree, which is on the land that used to belong to me, underneath the tree you will find the jewels that you gave me on my wedding day, or you gave your wife on her wedding day. And sure enough, when he dug the tree, there in a box were the wedding jewelry. So it is said that when she was in hell, a monk came to her and taught her how to recite, taught her the Dharma. And because of the good deeds done by her husband on her behalf, she was allowed to leave early, but on the condition that she come back and repay her debt to him. So that's the story that's on the internet. And on the day he died, I think she was really young at that time. He was old. So after a few years, I think 2 or 3 years of taking care of her former husband, he died. And on the same day, she had a heart attack and passed away herself. So, yes, question? Our hearts as well. They, I can give you the sisters' names, and you can. The sisters do have some poems which are recorded in the Therigatha. The Therigatha is a compilation of poems written by the nuns when they got, I think usually when they got awakened. Yeah, Therigatha. 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 So Teri is nuns, Thera for monks, and then Gata are verses. So you can find them online. Yeah, and I can give you the names of the 3 sisters later. Yeah. Or I can give it to you now. That Chala, Cala. Second sister is Upachala, Upacala. And the third sister is Sisupachala, Sisupacala. Okay.
We'll do transference first. Yeah, then maybe we can do transference. So then I know the Dharma Master says there's some people who are online. You can get some rest. I guess tonight, then you might be staying up to get to the new year. Or if not, you can go to sleep early. But then we'll also be following by some slideshow about the adulting retreat and Jin-He's recent trip to Snow Mountain Monastery. You can see the rabbit and the moon. White Christmas. So do people have the dedication of merit sheet in front of you if you need it? If anybody doesn't know by heart, you can maybe just raise your hand. We have a lot in the back, so maybe you can pass it out. Yeah, so dedication of merit. So how it works, just like Jin-He just gave the last story, is that for those maybe who are suffering or things that need extra support, like the well-being of our world, our country, our family, ourselves, our friends, we can actually transfer the goodness of studying the Dharma together tonight. And all the bad things we did not do that we could have done if we were out in the world doing stuff. So that's a lot of goodness there, and so we can actually give it away. So if you can put your in your heart, you want to kind of expand it and send out a goodness out into the world. Okay, put our palms together. May every living being our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. May I be so? Yeah, we'll go later. Okay, we can put it on the screen.
So one of the reasons I was at Snow Mountain was because Dhammasalai wanted the drone to go up to capture the mountains there with snow on it. So I promise you that this is a view of Snow Mountain that you've never seen before. Snow Mountain is in Washington State. And it's near a town. It's right next to a town called Index. And this is the rabbit in the moon. See it? So I've been fed a story of the rabbit in the moon since I was a child, but never the version of the Buddha. It was more to do with some moon goddess. I downloaded this from the internet. No, I didn't draw this, but yeah. I mean, don't you see the rabbit? No, isn't it obvious? No. Okay, so this was.
There you go. So this is actually a retreat we just had at. We just had this retreat at Sudana Center, which is our new campus in Ukiah, led by Reverend Heng Shi, and it was called Adulting in the Dharma. And it says there, what does adulting mean? It says to behave in an adult manner, to engage in activities associated with adulthood. And as we mentioned in the beginning of lecture, it was about who are our role models? What can we follow so that we have a way of growing up? And then how do we look inside so that we know what standards to live by? And so we had a whole day of looking into this question. And so Jin-He has a very interesting film, which is, you can see, time lapse? They call it time lapse. So you get to see the whole thing in speedy motion. You want to explain? Okay, probably self-explanatory. I think we had something like 80 people or 70 plus people attend. Quite a few. Oh, you're okay. This is the Student Center courtyard. It's a very nice place. we get a lot of local people. Yeah, some, but not that many. Quite a few people came up from the Bay Area, and quite a few people came from CTB. We actually got maybe 7 or 8 girls' school students, I think. Mr. Yap's niece came, granddaughter. Mr. Yap's granddaughter attended, who was a girls' school. Some people came up from the Bay Area. I saw Valerie Zhang there. She was new. She was from Berkeley. I think just dropped in. We had a Living the Practice program at CDDB. These were our students in the program, and they actually did a lot of work helping out to make the event possible. Oh, this is the end group photo in speedy motion. Let's see what. Okay, now Snow Mountain.
This is a fireplace in Snow Mountain. What you're hearing in the background is a train. So this is what you see if you go to Snow Mountain for the first time. This is the driveway, which Life Usher he cleared the snowmobile. Yeah, that's right. So that our car could go in. So this is the view from Snow Mountain that Life Usher gets to enjoy every single day. So I believe that's called Mount Index or Mount Perseus. Yeah, I think this was on the 24th, 23rd or 24th. This is, it was mainly, I think it was morning or evening. Yeah, it was my first time taking video, so this is what you see from the inside of Snow Mountain. Life Usher said that if you open your eye and you can fly around, this is what you see. So Snow Mountain is right next to this river. I think it's can't recall the name of the river, and that's the town of Index that has maybe about 80 or 100 people. And what you're gonna that's the sun. And that's Gun Peak, spelled G-U-N-N. That's Mount Index on the left and Mount Perseus on the right, named after the founder of Index's wife. And that's the track. You see that circular thing? That's the railroad track that you heard in the background. So this shot gives you a 360-degree view of what's around Snow Mountain. On all 4 sides are mountains. that's it.
So whoever's inspired to go to Snow Mountain Monastery, I think they have retreats on July 4th and on other, sometimes on the other long weekends. Labor Day, yeah, I think Labor Day do another retreat. So if people actually are interested in going, Dharma Master Lai helps. He kind of holds a Dharma assembly for 3 days there, with the disciples from Seattle. I know one of our community members here went for one of the retreats. Okay, so that's it for tonight. Happy everyone could join us on a New Year's Eve, learning the Dharma together to make the new year a good new year for sure. We can all bow to the Buddhas and bow to Master Hua. Yes. Oh yeah. As an announcement, we actually have. So this year, as I just said, we're a new year, and we have our calendars for this this year. Create blessings, nurture wisdom, sustain the Bodhi Manda. That's the monastery or the way place. So we have some calendars back there if you're interested. There's pictures of Snow Mountain, the 1st January, and there's even one of Sudana, I think is in May. Sudana Center is in May. So if you want to see what Sudana Center looks like, the new Buddha Hall, it's there. So, okay, so if you want to have a calendar for this upcoming year, there's all the activities of CDTB and all the Buddhist holidays. I'm sure there's not very many calendars that come with Buddhist holidays on it, so we have it in the back. And the lunar calendar is also there in Chinese, so it's all there. Okay,